Thank you, Karthik, and all you wonderful friends who have taken time out to listen to me on the ongoing farmer protests, the agrarian crisis in our country, and the attacks that the peasantry are facing in our country. I think these kind of um, platforms from where we are able to speak out to a wider audience about the different struggles going on here. And when a wide section of the corporate media is busy manufacturing consent for around this present authoritarian regime that we have, I think very important that all of us become our own media to take forward the issues of struggle to the widest possible. I think in that regard, this is a very significant. So that is why, despite the struggle going on and me having to go to different sites, when Karthik first proposed this, I took to it quite enthusiastically that yes, this is something which I should be part of it and also try to speak and reach out to a lot of you. I also would like to place a point of appreciation that staying in the United States and many of you probably need not have even thought about what is happening here, need not even have thought about expressing any solidarity. Because a lot of people, once they are into better earning and a different setting altogether, they tend to cut off from it. But the very fact that you have expressed concern at what is happening here. You have expressed solidarity with the struggle here of the poor farmers, the agriculture labor, and the working class is something which connects all of us together. And like Shama mentioned, your struggle is as much ours as our struggle is yours. I think this solidarity is very important. We have been getting wide messages of solidarity from different parts of the world. From Palestine, we had a solidarity message by the Stop the Wall campaign. Yesterday, the Nepal Peasant Federation came with a solidarity message. So you are having it. This has added strength and greater confidence to the movement that we have been building up meticulously over the last 6 years, if I would say, that it has been going on. Coming to the issue that the agrarian crisis, the attacks, and the present struggle, I think we should go back to 2014. To the credit of Narendra Modi and the BJP, they managed to generate a lot of hope in 2014 because already there was an agrarian crisis. The continued implementation of the neoliberal economic policies by different governments of different sections, whether it is the Congress or the BJP, had led to a crisis in our country. And in 2014, there were already a lot of farmers committing suicide due to the agrarian distress. Narendra Modi and BJP managed to channelize the anger against the second UPA government led by Congress, are taking the issues of the agrarian crisis, corruption, and so on, and promised literally the heavens to the farmers in 2014. A large number of those who are out protesting today are people who actually voted for the BJP in 2014 elections. What were the promises? Literally, the charter of demands in of an organization like ours was part of the manifesto of the BJP, except for maybe land reforms. Everything else, the prime minister promised that the agrarian crisis would be over once the BJP comes to power. Farmers' incomes would be doubled. Farmers would be given at least 1.5 times the cost of production for their crops as the support price. The prices of inputs would be reduced. It would be subsidized. So it would be the costs of cultivation would reduce. Cheaper credit at lower interest rates would be provided. For the agriculture labor under the MGNREGA, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, the number of days of work would be increased to 200 instead of 100, and wages would be increased. If there is a crop loss, there would be insurance provided to all farmers. Every farmer would be insured, and water to every field. Har khet ko pani. So it was promising Sabka Saath Vikas, that is development for everyone, a government that would be with everyone, stand with everyone, and bring development for everyone. Achhe din aayenge, good days are going to come now. And this campaign, the propaganda machinery of the BJP, the ample support with the corporate media, had led to a situation where the working class, a large section of the working class and the peasantry also extended support to the BJP. In 2014, they managed to win the elections. And I say this, that the agrarian sections, the farmers especially, have voted to BJP because of these promises. I give two specific examples. Haryana and Maharashtra never had BJP governments. Never in the history of independent India, you had BJP ruling on their own in Haryana. In Maharashtra, they always were a partner of the Shiv Sena, which was a larger ally. But this in 2014, with the support from the rural masses, they managed to come to power in Haryana, and also Maharashtra. They emerged as the biggest parties. So this hope that was generated, it was expected that he will also deliver. So once they came to power, once the government was formed, within a week, we from the All India Kisan Sabha met the agriculture minister and told him, implement your main promise of Narendra Modi of providing minimum support price at least 50% more than the cost of production. The agriculture minister just shrugged off, said, why are you taking it so seriously? During elections, different political parties make promises, and these promises cannot be implemented. Those for votes, we all make promises. It was so callous approach. And later you had the then BJP president Amit Shah saying it is Chunavi Jumla, or election time jingle only. Later the government filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court that this cannot be implemented. But the first 2 years of the Narendra Modi led BJP government, yes, there were more of attacks which were happening on the dissenting voices. You had attacks on writers, attacks on rationalists. In the name of cow slaughter and Goraksha, you had hundreds of people being killed. That was the situation in the early days of the Narendra Modi led BJP government. But in 2014 manifesto, one of the issues mentioned by the BJP was that they will not forcibly take over farmland. But within 6 months of coming to power, they came with a land acquisition ordinance. Like the 3 ordinances brought now, without any discussion, the land acquisition ordinance was brought. It was expected that there would be no opposition, given the popularity of Mr. Modi. But we managed to build a resistance at that time. We called it an issue-based resistance, issue-based unity. So more than 300 organizations of the peasantry, farmers, agriculture workers, the fishing community, the Dalits, Adivasis, the forest workers, all of them came together to form a land rights movement, or the Bhumi Adhikar Andolan, which spoke about the land rights of the landless, forest rights, and also against the indiscriminate land grab that was being promoted by this ordinance. Despite repeated efforts to get it passed, the Narendra Modi-led BJP government was forced to withdraw this ordinance, or keep it. They couldn't implement it through the parliament. So that was probably the first defeat that the Narendra Modi government suffered due to a united issue-based movement that we all managed to build. Then there were the issue of this price not being given according to the promise made, at least 1.5 times the cost of production. And farmers were already, the crisis was rising. Every year you had about 15 to 17,000 farmers committing suicide, according to the conservative estimates of the government. From 95, from when records are available, the conservative estimates almost 400,000 farmers in India have committed suicide. This does not include women farmers. This does not include a good number of Dalit Adivasi cultivators. It does not include landless cultivators and tenant cultivators. So you can imagine the actual magnitude of the crisis. That continued in this period. Earlier, when Karthik was speaking about the rising hunger, during a struggle in Maharashtra, I found a news report that in 5 months, 9,000 children had died of malnutrition. I thought it was an exaggeration. I tried to look into the facts for 1 year, and the figures were 21,000 children below the age of 5 had died due to malnutrition only in Maharashtra. The situation in Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, Jharkhand, etc., are much more. It is much more dangerous in those, and it is something like you had during the British imperialist time, when hunger led to thousands and thousands of people in India dying. And you talk about in this situation, when the entire population here was in crisis, the working class, the farmers, the agriculture labor, the oppressed communities, the government came with the demonetization decision. The Notebandi or the demonetization decision led to further distress for the people in the unorganized sector, the farmers and the agriculture workers. Farmers lost incomes. There were a lot of farmers whose crops, especially the perishables, fruits, vegetables, flowers, no buyers in the market. So the distress only increased. It is in such a circumstance that you had in 2017, when farmers were protesting in different parts of the world, in different parts of India, in Maharashtra, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh. 6 farmers were shot dead in Madhya Pradesh when they were protesting. I reached to these villages. I went to their houses of these 6 farmers. They were not associated with All India Kisan Sabha or with the left or even with the Congress. They were all activists of the BJP. You had BJP flags on their homes even then. But what was the demand they were making? They were demanding a fair price for their produce. In that season, what they had grown was garlic. Garlic, the cost of production in Mandsaur of Madhya Pradesh, according to farmers, was 33 to 35 rupees per kg. The BJP government claimed it was 27 rupees a kg. And then what was being offered to them by the traders? 1 rupee a kg. Just 1 rupee a kg. The cost of cultivation, even if you take the government's figures, it was 27 rupees a kg. So the same day, Ambani's Reliance Fresh was selling it at 147 rupees a kg. Today, Mr. Modi is telling that Ambani and Adani is going to give you better price than what you are getting in the agriculture produce markets. So that is not only that. If you see in that particular period, you also find an increase in the prices of pulses. Arhar dal, which is used in a big way here, the pigeon pea, was costing in the market for consumers up to 220 rupees a kg, when farmers growing it in North Karnataka and other regions, semi-arid regions of our country, were getting only anything between 35 to 40 rupees a kg. Per kilo, about 180 rupees profits earned in a big way by these agri-businesses You had Adanis, Ambanis, Birlas, Tatas, ITC, everyone into this sale of pulses. So that is the kind of profiteering some of these companies have been having. And farmers have been paid very low, even lesser than the cost of production. Naturally, it led to a lot of protests at that time. We managed to, after the Mansoor firing, we managed to come together to form the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee, a countrywide committee of coordination committee of farmers on struggle, different organizations of the farmers. Now we have almost 250 organizations which have come together. This also was an issue-based unity built around the two issues of remunerative price, assured remunerative price for the farmers, and freedom from indebtedness. So there were many struggles by under the banner of the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee. The All India Kisan Sabha from 2014 also has had independent struggles, and you might have all witnessed the Kisan Long March from Nasik to Mumbai, where thousands of farmers marched about 186 kilometers in about a week's time. And the BJP government there was forced to bow down and accept all the demands made. You might also seen struggles in Rajasthan, Himachal, and different other states. Due to these struggles, an impression was created, and rightly so, that BJP Modi Kisan Virodhi. This became a slogan in the villages of our country. And it also led to certain electoral reverses for the BJP in some of the states. That is when, in 2018, we had a national a movement by the working class and the peasantry, the farmers, agriculture, labor. You had on September 5th, you had a countrywide jail bharo. On August 9th, sorry, on the day of Quit India movement, in which over 500,000 people took part across the country. For the first time, we had retired soldiers coming out in support and actively standing with this movement. And on September 5th, you had a Mazdoor Kisan Sangharsh rally where almost 200,000 farmers, 2 lakh farmers and agriculture workers and workers came together in Delhi protesting against the policies. In November end of 2018, you had the Kisan Mukti rally in Delhi, where again the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee managed to mobilize a huge, more than a lakh farmers in Delhi. So these struggles have been happening for the last 6 years. But then in 2019, Narendra Modi and BJP managed to win the election in a bigger way. They have used the Pulwama Balakot incidents for a big ultra-nationalist campaign. The corporate media has aided them in a big way. We say here they have got a new term, the Godi media. The media that's in the Modi's lap is actually the mouthpiece of the government, and also resorts to all kind of fake news as well as propaganda against any voice of dissent. So we have seen how the students have protests have been suppressed, the manner in which they have sought to suppress. Post the institutional murder of Rohit Vemula, the manner in which the students were attacked. The Una struggle you have seen, the manner in which the government dealt with some of these protests. And Shama was mentioning about the Citizenship Amendment Act and so on. So that making use of these divisive campaigns also, the BJP managed to come to power again. But the promises of 2014 have come back to haunt them now. The farmers' suicides in 5 years were almost 70,000 farmers committed suicide according to the government figures. They initially, the last 2 years figures, they were not releasing. Many states have not given the correct figures. They had promised 2 crore jobs for the youth every year, but in 45 years, the highest unemployment rate. was during this time. And then post 2019, the 1 year, an economic recession kind of situation where people were losing jobs. In textile industry, about 30 lakh, 3 million people losing jobs. In automobile industry, about a million people losing jobs. And unorganized sector also facing a lot of problems. This has been happening since demonetization and the GST, implementation of the GST. So now in 2019, it is in a crisis, extreme crisis, where the working class, the farmers, the agriculture labor, the most oppressed sections were at the receiving end of these policies, which have promoted corporate profiteering at the expense of the people. You have all seen how their cronies, whether it is Mallyas or Nirav Modi's, Lalit Modi's, and Mehul Choksis and others, how they have benefited from these policies. Similarly, how the Adanis and Ambanis have benefited. So it is in such a circumstance that the pandemic struck the world. When the pandemic struck Wuhan, and then later the World Health Organization and Food and Agriculture organizations expressed caution, and that it would lead to a major unemployment crisis and a food crisis. Almost 3 months were spent by the government here in carrying forward with their divisive agenda rather than deal with the pandemic in a united manner. The first case was reported in Kerala in January of by the end of January, but till March end, what was the main activities of the BJP-led central government? You had the suppression of the CAA, NRC, and NPR protests. You have all seen how lots of activities are arrested. Many of us are named in the different FIRs filed by this government, where the police cases are going on. You had the Article 370, the rights of the Kashmiri people being totally suppressed, and that is something which happened. And a campaign around these, a communal divisive campaign which was taken forward, and whoever was raising their voice of protest being branded anti-national. So that is what they have been doing. They also, in between, rolled the red carpet for Bolsonaro, and then for Trump. You had the Namaste Trump incident, the mega event, where Trump claimed that almost more than a few million people came to listen to him. This was all during the pandemic, when the world was talking about physical distancing and such issues. You had the Indian government going all out to mobilize huge numbers of people to help Trump maybe tide over the election there also, to benefit in the elections in the United States. They were also trying to dislodge an elected government through horse trading in Madhya Pradesh during this pandemic. And on March 22nd, suddenly they announced a Janta curfew, a people's curfew, and call upon people to bang plates and clap hands, supposedly in honor of the health workers and the sanitation staff. But the concrete measures to help these workers, nothing. Even now, the nurses of our country's top hospitals are out in struggle because they are not even having the basic protection that is being provided to deal with the pandemic. They are not getting proper wages. So they are out on the streets. In such a circumstance, you have the government announcing the 24th March lockdown. The lockdown was also announced without any discussion with the governments, like the demonetization with the state governments or with any political parties. When the lockdown was announced, the Indian farmers were expecting a bumper harvest. Compared to the last year, the North Indian farmers had the wheat cultivation, the acreage of wheat cultivation had increased by 11%. So they were all expecting many other crops. This was April, May is the harvest time. So you had, for instance, wheat, mustard, some of the pulses, cauliflower, some places corn, potato, and different fruits. This is the time of harvest. But the manner in which the lockdown was implemented, we all saw the exodus that happened of the unorganized sector workers, especially the migrant workers, the agriculture laborers not being available for the harvest. The biggest exodus after the partition, that is what we saw. And the government left the workers to fend for themselves. Nothing was done to help the thousand and more people in this process of going back to their hometowns or villages were killed in either accidents, committed suicide, or due to hunger. But the government did not arrange for vehicles or trains during that time to ensure they go back. So, in such a circumstance, the harvesting operations were affected in a big way. It also, when the laborers were not there, even if the family itself harvested these crops, they could not take it to the market because there was no transport. Even in case the markets were nearer by and they could transport it to the markets, they could not, there were no buyers for it. So you had in the first 23 days of the lockdown, compared to the last year, same period, the arrivals of wheat in the market were only 6% of what had arrived in the last year. So all sections lost their incomes. Milk, the dairy farmers, per liter 10 to 15 rupees lower only was being. The floriculture, they were forced to abandon their crops because the markets were not there. Uh, Tomato cultivators, vegetable and fruit cultivators, a lot of crops were lost. So incomes were lost by all sections. Working class also, according to figures, about 12 crores people lost their jobs during this pandemic period. According to Professor Arun Kumar, it is more than 20 crore people. So that is the magnitude of the crisis. In such a circumstance, working class and the organization of farmers and labor uh, and the oppressed sections had come together to demand an income support for those who lost their incomes, especially the poor, non-tax paying sections of our country. A food security program where they would be given not just rice or wheat, but like the Kerala's left front government has given an entire kit which is required for a family throughout the month. Nothing of that sort was done by this government. And suddenly you have on the first week of June, the government announces 3 ordinances and claims the Indian farmers did not get independence or did not get freedom on 15th August 1947, and Mr. Narendra Modi was granting freedom or independence to Indian farmers to sell their produce anywhere in the country. This itself is a big lie because the regulated markets, not even 30% of the total agriculture produce was sold through the regulated markets. Demands of organizations like ours were to expand these regulated markets so that farmers have in close proximity these markets, the market mechanism. From June 5th itself, we have had protests against this. Even in the pandemic, repeated protests we have been having. June 5th, we burned these ordinances in more than 3,600 centers across the country. And continuously there have been protests against this. This government did not bother to have any discussion. Once the ordinance has been promulgated, they could have still had discussions, tried to arrive at a consensus. If they are so confident that it helps the farmers, they could have called all farmers' organizations. They could have spoken to political parties. Nothing of that sort had happened. Farmers, in the course of our struggles from 2014 to 2019, had come up from amid struggles. 2 bills had been prepared. One was assured remunerative price and another for freedom from indebtedness, both of which have been brought in the parliament as private member bills. But the government did not bother to even look into these bills, which were the demands from the grassroots. And now they come with these three ordinances, and the manner in which it was pushed through the Parliament of India without following the parliamentary procedures, that all of you have seen. There was not even, the members of parliament were not even allowed to move statutory resolutions. There was no debate allowed. And those who raised this issue, 8 members of parliament, were actually suspended. So that undemocratic manner in which the bills were passed also. Along with it, you have also labor laws being diluted, the rights of the laborers being snatched. And it is the Chicago martyrs, and from 1880s, you have the demand of 8 hours of work and 8 hours of leisure, no cut in pay. Now, Narendra Modi and his government says you need to work 12 hours. You cannot unionize. You cannot raise questions. So that is the system that they are trying to create. So what are these 3 bills that have been passed? Why this opposition? That is something to see. And repeatedly it is being said, the farmers of India are being misled by certain people. In fact, Modi said that certain leaders are using the farmers' shoulders to fire at the Modi government. That their propaganda machinery, the entire machinery are also on this, going to the villages. But the farmers are refusing to believe them for once. They have seen the last 6 years of betrayal. Promise after promises have been broken. And the different organizations of farmers have actually gone to the field in the last, from June onwards, explain to them what is going to happen with this. The government is now trying to say it is only a Punjab specific struggle. It's not happening elsewhere. The corporate media is also trying to portray it as though it's a Punjab specific struggle. And they made a lot of effort to discredit it, how it is Pakistan and China are behind it. Canadian funds are coming, and it is the Khalistanis who are behind it. The Tukde gang are behind it. Anti-national, different things. There have been threats of arrests, including to the General Secretary of the Kisan Sabha, Comrade Hanan Mullah. There have been false cases foisted on many of the leaders. So that is how they are dealing. So what is it that these 3 acts are containing? One is they have a penchant for attractive names. Everything, the worst acts, they say in Latin America, in Uruguay and some other places, the names of the worst prisons are liberty, freedom, and so on. Similarly, you have a penchant here for Narendra Modi and his team to name everything either Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, everything is the Prime Minister's program. And or you have Deen Dayal Upadhyay program. You add these names. Now, in these 3 acts, you see the names of those. Like the manifesto which was brought by the BJP in 2014, probably we couldn't, the organization of farmers could not have been unhappy with it. You couldn't, it was actually promising many things which we have been demanding. Now these acts, you see the names. I need to read it. Even Narendra Modi cannot mention the names without looking at it's such names. The Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitating Act. So this is one name. You have the Farmers Empowerment Agreement of Price Assurance and Farm Services Act. Everyone wants the farmers to be empowered. protected. It gives all these name. The name is sounds as though this is only going to empower the farmers. Why are farmers out on the streets then? I think it needs to be put in a simple way to the across to the larger audience. The first and foremost thing to be mentioned is these have not emerged suddenly one fine night. Narendra Modi didn't get the bright idea of coming up with these three acts. This is something which has been going on. It has been going on, the neoliberal agenda, which has been going on in our country from 1991, whether it is the Congress-led government or the BJP-led government, but much more aggressively under the BJP government. The WTO, in the WTO, repeatedly, United States, European Union, and other countries have been pressurizing India to cut agricultural subsidies, to cut food subsidies, to withdraw from public stock holding. Later in 2014, the Narendra Modi government had set up a Shantakumar Commission, a former BJP chief minister from Himachal Pradesh. And that commission also articulated these demands of the countries like United States, etc., in WTO in his recommendations, where one of the major recommendation was to cut food subsidies and also withdraw from the privatize the Food Corporation of India and so on. So now these acts are only putting those suggestions into giving it a legal sanction. They tried these things in different ways. Earlier, there was a model contract farming law, model APMC Act, which they tried to force the states to implement. Some states also brought some changes to reduce the control of the state governments and so on. Now what they are doing is they are taking over the entire agriculture, policy making in agriculture. Agriculture under our constitution is actually a state subject. Now, in the name of this is not dealing with agriculture, it is dealing with trade. That is the claim they are making. And without any consultation with the state governments in a federal system, they have come up with these three acts. What is it in effect doing? In effect, it is actually concentrating all powers in the central government. What is required for a later fascist project for them? You have the GST, the taxes that have already led to centralization. And in the pandemic period, even the states have not been given their dues in the GST. The states are forced to beg from the center for what is their due under the GST regime. That is happening. Now you are having a system where the entire agriculture marketing, which also was getting revenues for many states, being totally dismantled. And the government is claiming that these companies will provide you better price for your produce. Farmers have seen it before. You have had companies like Pepsi and other big MNCs coming in. And though maybe in the first few days, they might have benefited also in terms of better prices, soon the things start changing because these corporations are only interested in maximizing profits. So in such a circumstance, when why did the APMCs come first place, the regulated markets? It was to ensure that the big traders cannot exploit the farmers of our country. There is at least some kind of control of the government, a level playing field, an auctioning system, and the big traders also have to give some taxes to the government, which can help in expanding the marketing infrastructure and so on. So that was a system which had come. Initially, it did start in 1930s itself in Punjab, but post the Green Revolution, this system was expanded across the country in most of the states. There are also examples of states like Bihar, which in 2006 did away with their APMC Act, and they said the traders would give you better prices. What is the situation there? You have a lot of people. Actually, you might have seen a quite popular program by Shekhar Gupta, the print video. He claims how Bihar farmers have benefited after the APMCs have been done away with. I think he should go and to a village in Bihar and dare to say this. And he was claiming they have earned better. That has been debunked by Professor Ramkumar of Tata Institute of Social Science. And the earnings that the Bihar farmers make and the comparison with the Punjab farmers in Punjab. Farmers, the per month income from cultivation per agricultural household in Punjab is 10,862 rupees. In Bihar, it is 1,715. You see the difference. And I'm not saying that the system has no problems, but this government is trying to throw the baby with the bathwater. That is what happening. There is a reason why Punjab and Haryana and Western UP farmers are more out in the protest, because those are the states where this market mechanism is much wider. Market mechanism is much wider and procurement is more effective there, especially wheat and paddy, which is being procured. Totally less than 10% of farmers are able to benefit from this minimum support price. Our demand is ensure that every crop that is being sold, the minimum support price will be ensured, and there should be a procurement mechanism even in the far-flung regions of our country. Unfortunately, nothing in that direction is being made, and they claim that these companies will help you out. The other bill that has been passed is the Essential Commodities Amendment Act. Essential commodities in 50s and so on, it was in a situation of food crisis and price rise that this was brought in. It was now they are saying it is a British law and we are wanting it to continue and so on. It was trying to put an end to hoarding and black marketing by big corporate, big traders at that time. Now what has happened in the Essential Commodities Act is it has removed wheat, rice, pulses, oil seeds, different vegetables like potato, onion from the list of essential commodities. Literally, that is what is going to happen. So there is a possibility for big agri-businesses to hoard unlimited quantities according to their installed capacity. Even in a crisis, whether it's a war, whether it is a famine, whether it is a food scarcity, the installed capacity can be retained by these companies for agro-processing, for exports, and so on. So already you have big silos that are being constructed by the Modi's cronies like Adani's. They have Adani Agri Logistics. And what has been happening from 2014 to 2020, almost 20 such places they have been building their silos, huge silos. And with the Food Corporation of India, they have also entered into agreements for storage. So these acts is as though what Adanis were doing from 2014 preempted these acts. And these acts are actually creating a system wherein these big silos, storage facilities being coming up in different places and by Adani Agri Logistics, they wouldn't have any restrictions on them. The government claim is that if there is a 100% price rise, then the government can intervene, may intervene. 100% price rise, even in such circumstance, this installed capacity is not going to be touched. So this is going to lead to a price rise for consumers. So this protest is not just about farmers. Farmers are net buyers of these things, but the consumers are also going to be hit in a big way. The third act, which I mentioned about price assurance and guarantee, there is not a single word mentioned about minimum support price being guaranteed in that. minimum support price at C2 plus 50. C2 is a cost computation, cost of production, the comprehensive cost. So far, the Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices is not even fixing prices based on this. Punjab government claims 2,400 or so is the cost of production per quintal of wheat. The central government's Commission on Agriculture Costs and Prices claims the cost of production of wheat in Punjab is 1,100. Not even 50% of what the Punjab Agriculture Ministry department has told. And in this manner, every state's prices are depressed and a weighted average is taken. So farmers are losing out in a big way, huge amounts, and even this minimum support price that is being announced by the government is only on paper. It is not actually accessible to the large number of poor farmers of our country. Our demands is expand this mechanism and assure procurement for all farmers. That is not being done by this government. A good number of you who are listening are from Tamil Nadu. We had a senior leader of our organization from Tamil Nadu who would say in Chas Tamil something to the effect that children were asking their uncle for sweets and sugar, and the uncle just writes sugar on a piece of paper and says, yes, you can take sugar. So it's something like that. It's just on paper. It is only notional for a large section of the farmers. So making these prices actually reflect the actual cost of the farmers and ensuring that farmers are assured these prices. Nothing has happened in that direction. Farmers have realized that. Farmers, more than anyone, have realized that this is an act. These are acts made to benefit Adani and Ambani. In 2014, when there was a big propaganda about Gujarat model, the simple farmers of Gujarat would tell us that these are nothing to do with Gujarat model. It is Modi and Adani Ambani's model of corporate loot of our land, water, resources, mineral resources, and forests. It is the Modani model of corporate loot. What we are having is actually the Modani model of corporate loot, which is being implemented. In 2016, some of us tried to explain to the larger population that the demonetization is actually hitting at the poor. And we need to turn this fight against the corporates who are profiteering, even in a pandemic, increasing their earnings, wealth in a big way. The need to posit it against them. The simple farmers of our country, whom Modi keeps mentioning is being misled, they have realized that these acts are Adani Ambani acts. Adani and Ambani have come to signify the Modi regime, and they seem to be dictating the agriculture policy of our country. So there is a spontaneous call for boycott of Adani and Ambani products. I'm sure other corporate companies are also exploiting, no doubt about that. But these two companies have come to symbolize the and the anger of the farmers are also. So a lot of farmers are not, and even others who are in solidarity coming out to give up some of these products. So this struggle is throwing up different kinds of wonderful kind of resistance that is being built. You saw the thousands marching to Delhi. You saw the manner in which the central government, BJP government, dealt with it. Just imagine, as though at the borders between two warring nations, digging trenches on the national highways, putting huge shipping containers on the national highway, barbed wire fencing, use of water cannons in this winter on the protesting farmers, lathi charge, tear gas, everything. You saw the manner in which the farmers just pushed through all that and came to the borders of Delhi. Now, even as the government is claiming that it's only a Punjab specific struggle, we are having states after states, indefinite struggles growing due to the problems of transportation and all that. It's very difficult for getting a bigger section of farmers here. But still, on the from Madhya Pradesh, from Rajasthan, Maharashtra, the other borders are also now being occupied by the farmers. In such a circumstance, you had the Supreme Court suddenly intervening with some persons, like during the Citizenship Amendment Act, saying how this is blocking the roads. We say that the roads have been blocked by the government. The farmers have not put up these barricades. The farmers did not dig up the trenches. Hold the government responsible. The farmers were coming to Delhi for a democratic discussion with the government. The government initially refused all discussions. Then they had farcical negotiations in repeating the same thing, how it is going to benefit. In between, Amit Shah in one of the negotiations said that the government is also under pressure. Under whose pressure? They are evidently under the pressure of Ambanis and others. That is why so far they are not withdrawing. Because you see, even among the right wing, even among the Sangh, the Bharatiya Kisan Sangh claims they are against the farm bills. The Swadeshi Jagran Manch claims they are against the farm bills. They may be scared of speaking out with the kind of regime they have. Modi Shah regime is there. But the farmers are not scared. They realize that this is going to hit at their livelihoods. It is going to adversely affect the future generations. And like Karthik was mentioning, Punjab, if you take a large number of the farmers are tenant cultivators who are actually Dalit cultivators. Punjab has one of the highest population of Dalits in our country. So this is a solidarity that we are cutting across different classes. A solidarity has emerged. Yes, the issues of caste discrimination and oppression, I am not saying they are going away. But in the course of struggles, in the course of the new solidarities that are emerging, we are able to raise some of such issues. In 2014, when we came with the Bhumi Adhikar Andolan, when we said we would go according to the Constitution of India given by Baba Sahib Ambedkar, few organizations walked out. When we said we are going to also not speak only about land acquisition, but also about land rights of the landless, of the Dalits, forest rights of the Adivasis, some groups walked out. They were good riddance. But in the course of struggles, even on while we initially were only on two issues, the consensus built on more issues. Organizations which probably never took up issues of caste oppression started speaking out on Una issue. Those who are hesitant to take up the issue of attacks by Gorakshaks, so-called Gorakshaks, the barbaric attacks in the name of Goraksha, they started speaking out by 2018 on those issues. Those who were never willing to take the criticism against the neoliberal economic policies, now they are, at least a good number of them are talking about how from 91 the policies which have been implemented. Some of the organizations that are protesting today, in 91 when the All India Kisan Sabha had come up with its critique of the neoliberal economic policies and the new agriculture policy, had claimed that the policies would get the world market prices for Indian farmers. Today, some journalists are talking about this being the 91 moment for agriculture. They forget that the 91 moment for agriculture, according to conservative estimates, have led to at least 400,000 farmers committing suicide. We don't want that kind of a situation to replicate in a much bigger and manner now. That is why this protest is growing, and there is solidarity from all sections emerging. Working class, the November 26th strike, you had about 26 crore workers coming out in strike. The farmers and agriculture workers extending support to that strike. And later on, all activities of the farming community, the peasantry, have been supported actively by by the working class, by a lot of others, a nationwide solidarity, teachers for farmers, railwaymen for farmers, transport workers for farmers, bank employees for farmers, students, youth, women, every section coming out in support of the farmers. And I would assure you, a good number of them are people who voted for Narendra Modi in 2014 and 2019. They are realizing that this struggle is, as the victory of this struggle is as much important as for the democracy of our the democratic rights of the people of our country. And surely this struggle needs to be also channelized into a pro-people alternative that has to emerge. That is an arduous task. It is not at all an easy task, but issues of public health, universal health, education, social security, and also the fight against caste oppression and discrimination, gender discrimination, all these aspects have to be included in a broad issue-based unity that we can build. And this struggle has inspired like never before. And farmers in peak winter have been out on the streets, sleeping on the streets, but they have come prepared for the long haul. And all your support is going to help us take forward this to a victory. And I am confident that a united movement, the people who united, will surely emerge victorious. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak. I probably exceeded my time, maybe so many issues involved. So we can maybe, if there are some questions to be asked, I will try to, the best of my ability, I'll try to answer them. Thank you, friends.